Sairam, everyone. My name is Julie Trivedi. I grew up in New Jersey, and my parents came to this country in 1972. And I came into Swami's fold probably around the age of 8 or 9. I remember going with my mom's older brother, so my mama. He was very involved with a lot of service activities in New Jersey where I grew up. And so we would accompany him and all of my cousins. We all lived in New Jersey as well. And so we would go to the soup kitchens in South Jersey. And it was something that we just really enjoyed doing. And at least from what my mom tells me, that's how they actually started to become more involved in Swami's fold too. We actually had a Sai Center at our home from, I believe, when I was around the age of 10 or so. And that was the Roseland Sai Center, which is in northern New Jersey. And that was just, it was an interesting experience because I was growing up into this. We didn't really have that many children coming for Bal Vikas because this was, the late 80s and early 1990s. And so there was a few other kids my age that sometimes we would have SSE or Bal Vikas classes is what they were called at that time in the 90s. But with the regional activities, I became more involved with the young adults and helped to coordinate some of the young adult programs for the Mid-Atlantic retreat. I think one of the most amazing experiences I had was to be able to go to the first World Youth Conference in 1997 that was held in Puttaparthi. And just to be able to be there as part of that was a pretty interesting experience. I was going through a lot in my own personal life at the time. And so I just remember really praying to Swami, wanting his guidance on helping to navigate some of the things that I was experiencing at that time. The first time I had gone to Puttaparthi was in 1988. I was actually 10 years old at the time. And that was interesting as well, because I just remember sitting with my mom and my sister, and it was hot because we went in the summertime of 1988. So I just remember it being so hot and, sitting on the ground, waiting for a darshan line and hoping and praying that you actually get there to the front. As I went through college, I had a lot of challenges in my own personal life. And after I graduated college, I started medical school. I got married after my first year of medical school. And then I think with just the way life was with medical school, with being married, and then all of the medical training and having children, I stopped going to the Sai Center. I stopped being involved with any types of Sai activities. And I think there was some personal balance, struggles and discussions that I was having with Swami, about how could you let some of the things happen to me in my life, and just trying to understand why it is that I went through some of the things that I went through, and kind of trying to figure out what my relationship with God was. I think that a lot of times as we were growing up, especially in this country, my parents came to the country, so they didn't understand what it was like to grow up in America. And here we were trying to balance what it meant to be from an Indian background, and then also trying to fit in with the other kids who were not Indian. And we kind of felt like we weren't here and we weren't there, and so it was a big struggle inside, trying to fit in, trying to feel like we had a place, trying to feel like we actually had friends and a social circle in school, but then also wanting to make sure that we learned our prayers and our shlokas, and we knew how to do puja, and that we knew the importance of God and all of that in our lives. And so at that age, when you're young, a lot of it is just taking information in. And there's not necessarily a lot of conscious thought about what is my relationship with God like. And so those questions started to come out, I think, when I was in my 20s, my early 20s and mid 20s. And there was a lot of struggle. I think that secretly I was mad at God and mad at Swami for allowing things to happen in my life. And yet I knew that, when I think about what happened in my life, the story that always comes to my mind was, the story about the footprints in the sand. And it's like I knew that basically that at the times that I went through struggles in my life, that it was God who carried me through. But I was still upset for having experienced those things. And so, I had this internal struggle within me about trying to reconcile what it meant to have God in my life. And then, life happened. I got married, had children, went through all my medical training. We had lost a couple of pregnancies in between our two children, moved all around as we often do with medical training. And then I started to have a lot of struggles within their own relationship. And I think I was in my late 30s at this time. And I think it was a time of awakening for me, honestly, a time of thinking about who I am, what it is that I want out of my life, what is important, and how to live my life more intentionally. Because I think that up until then, it was a very reactive way of living. Something happens and you just respond and you go to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And before you realize it, 10 years have passed and you wonder where the time went and you wonder what you did with your time and how you lived your life. And it became a time for me to think about what I wanted to do with my life and the impact that I wanted to have. And it also was a time of thinking about what wasn't working for me in my life. We went through a lot of relationship struggles. And then in 2017, I moved to Dallas with my two daughters. My husband and I, at the time, actually, we separated. And we had been married at that point almost 17 years, actually. So it was a long time to have had somebody in my life. And so moving to Dallas, raising my kids on my own, there was so many struggles that I went through. And, I remember my mom would come and she would tell me to, take the kids to the Sai Center and put them in SSE. And I said, you know what, Mom, if you want to do it, you go ahead. I don't want to have anything to do with it. I am not ready for that. I just don't. You can go and take them and you can bring them back. And so that's what she would do whenever she was there in town. She would take them to the Sai Center. And then in 2019, I had a big mental health crisis. And this is something that I talk about because I think it's important even in the Indian community and the Sai community to be able to talk about the importance of mental health and what it is that people are struggling with. And I just remember there was one time when I was sitting with the therapist. We were in group therapy. And, the realization came to my mind that my whole life I kept thinking that if I behaved a certain way, then I was deserving of God's love. That if I complied with whatever society expected me to do or be or how I was supposed to be, then God would love me. And I had this realization that none of that is true. That God does not expect you to be a certain way to earn his love. And when you have that realization, your whole world opens up. Because you realize that, you can be who you are. You don't have to be a certain way. That we're all human in some form, and yet we're also all divine in some form. And that we make mistakes, and we learn from those mistakes. And that we always strive to be better than what we were before, And realizing that you don't have to be perfect, and you don't have to always conform to what everyone expects out of you, which I think in our culture growing up is a big thing, about this is how you should be, and this is what you need to do. And it's a hard struggle when you're trying to figure out what makes you happy and how you want to be in your life, and you're still trying to balance what it is that, let's say, your parents want for you or what society expects out of you. And I think these are common challenges and struggles that many of us experience. But having that realization that I didn't need to be a specific type of person in order to earn God's love is really what changed everything for me. And later that year, I started to go to the Sai Center. I remember it was Akhanda Bhajans in November at the Dallas Sai Center. And I went for the first time. And I had not been in a Sai Center for, probably 20 years. And everything changed for me after that. I think I just cried. And I cried and I cried and I cried. And every time I would go to the Sai Center on the weekend, on Sundays when we'd have, a study circle for the adults or SSE for the kids and followed by bhajans, I would just cry. And it just changed my life so drastically. And one thing that I like other parents to know is that There's a lot of parents who worry when their kids go off to college, what's going to happen? And are they going to follow Swami's teachings? And how are they going to be? And who are they going to be? And how are they going to behave? And will they, when they grow older, will they take their own children to SSE? And I think it's really important to remember that we all have our own journeys in life. And I look back now and I realize that those 20 years of my life was part of my worldly life that I had to live. It was part of that life where I had to do my medical training, and I was married and had 2 children and all of this. And it felt as if like that time period of my life was, it's still there, but it was kind of wrapped up a little bit. And like Swami was calling me back to him. And that's how I really feel. Things changed for me since November of 2019. That's the time that, everything changed for me spiritually. I love going to the Sai Center. I love participating in study circle. My kids are in SSE. So my older one, she started when she was 9 or in 4th grade. So I forget exactly what class that was. Maybe 2A, I think. And now she is in 3C, and my younger one, or 3A, 4A. No, my older one is in 4A now, and my younger one is in 2A. And, they're going through their own journey and struggle of trying to figure out what their relationship with Swami is, and what does God mean, and how do you want to be in this life, especially with my older one. She's 15. She's a sophomore in high school. And things are hard, things are hard when people behave certain way and you're trying to figure out who it is that you want to be and what's important to you. One thing that I really love and enjoy is seeing how the 4B and C students are, so those are the 11th and 12th graders, and seeing how much they've incorporated Swami into their day-to-day activities. And I really like that part of the SSE classes that the kids go to, is that, we don't want the relationship with Swami to be a theoretical or a philosophical thing. It's really thinking about in your day-to-day life application, how is it that your relationship with Swami shows up? And that is something that I know we always talk about with the kids, but it's something also that's going to be part of their own journey, and that all I can do as a parent now is to be able to, it's like a garden, you pull out the weeds and you tend the soil and you fertilize it and you plant the seeds. And then after that, it's up to those seeds to grow into whatever they're going to grow into, and I think when I realized that there's only so much I can do. There's only so much influence I can have over the path that my children take. But it's important for me to at least foster them with the right information and the nutrition so that, maybe when they're older, all of those things will come around full circle for them too, no matter what their journey and what their path is like. And so I think that is really important. I think that something else that was really touching was being able to take my girls in 2019. So you can see 2019 was a really important year for me. We went in December of 2019. It was me, my 2 daughters, and then my parents. We met up in India, and we were able to spend Christmas in Prashanti Nilayam. And to be able to spend Christmas there was an amazing experience. Just seeing all of the songs and presentations and performances was really profound. And that was the first time that I had been there in over 20 years. And so to be able to be there and share that with my 2 daughters was a really special experience too, and that's something that I would always remember. And I know the girls remember too, especially when they would, throw out candies to everybody and some prasadam and stuff. So, I think that things are different. We change over time. And I think that it's really important to remember that our life is a journey, and that even if we go through struggles at any particular given moment, that struggle in and of itself does not need to determine the whole course of our life. And that at every moment we have the ability to choose how we want to be and what relationship we want to have with God. When the opportunity came up to participate in the East Africa Medical Mission Service, I remember in my mind seeing it and saying I would like to go. But that is also my daughter's birthday. Today is actually her birthday, and she's turning 10. So I'm here in Tanzania, and she's not. But I remember wanting to go and then not. And then later on, I said, I had to make that decision in my mind. I kept thinking, okay, if the plane tickets work out and if the prices are this, but in my mind, I had to decide whether I truly wanted to go. And that makes me realize that, God's not going to force you to do anything. It still has to come out of your own free will and your own free choice. But once you decide you want to go on that journey, then it's easier to be able to surrender to Swami and to allow the path and everything else to unfold. And that's really where I've come to, at least in the last year of my life, is realizing that there's so many things that come our way in life, and we can try to control them and we can try to influence them. But really what we need to do is also to surrender to whatever those things are. And now I find that I'm more automatically surrendering to Swami and saying, Swami, you will figure out however this is going to be, and I'm going to trust in that. And that takes pressure off of my shoulders. It helps me to worry less and realize that, there's bigger things in this world than just me alone, and that there are bigger forces at play. And once we realize that and accept that and learn that, then so much more becomes possible for us. And it's a lot more of a stress-free way of living as well. So I just wanted to share my story. And yeah, thank you. Sorry.